zoning blueprint. And Councillor Tessier, you would like to carry on further?
Yes, Chair. I think we're ready to roll.
We have a motion coming up. So this, just to be clear, Ms. Bujaya, the other motion no one made the other motion. So we're now looking at this motion that Councillor Tessier has been working on. Okay, would you like to review it, Ms. Councillor Tessier, and let us know if this is the one you'd like on the floor?
Yeah, I can read it out if that's okay, Mayor.
Sure, please.
Or Chair, sorry. I'll move that by the end of March 2023, administration prepare a report on options and implications related to addressing congestion of street parking and encouraging parking in garages and alleviating street congestion, limiting additional dwelling units for front detached garage product to 1, limiting additional dwelling units for rear detached garage product to 2, and requiring 1 to be a garage suite, disallowing further zero lot line homes, disallowing further tiny homes or mobile homes, adjusting the amount of parking for additional dwelling units to 1 parking stall per bedroom, and limiting the number of business-related vehicles allowed for home-based businesses. So it sounds like a lot because it is a lot, but remember, if we get this report, it's going to give us the implications of what that'll look like before actually putting the bylaw in place. And I think I've talked about this for long enough today and previous times, but if you want, Chair, I can keep going.
No, I would like to go home tonight sometime. So thank you, Councillor Tessier. Councillor Monkoff-Swain, I think you're up first.
So thanks for the clarity. 2 questions. So obviously administration has an opinion on this, not asking for that tonight, but the word implications, does that mean to me, does that mean that administration is going to study that and you'll say, you know, point 1, 3, and 7 are a dumb idea because of these 4 reasons? Maybe not in that technical language, but what I'm looking for when you guys come back is like, I want your opinion on this and not just how we would do it, right? So I just want to make sure that that's what we're getting from you guys from this motion.
Who's like that? Answer that question, Ms. Raymond.
Through the chair to Councillor Monkoff-Swain, yes, we will provide our professional opinion on how the municipality should go about dealing with these items. So not just how you would deal with it, but what the professional opinion is for actually doing that. So what would that be in disallowing further zero lot line homes, not just how we would do that? Yes.
Perfect. Thank you. That's what I'm looking for. And then the only question is the highlighted piece, end of March. I don't know how much it impacts budget, but we, you know, I assume this is coming back to a committee, the whole meeting. Would that be the venue for this?
This, by the way, has to go to council first. So we can't make this decision here. So this will be referred to council as a recommendation.
I think we need time to take this away to figure out how much work this is in relation to the other projects that we actually have on the go right now. We will be entering into our busy season in terms of starting to do permits again, starting in January. I know that this does need to have the referral motion that then goes back to council for them to actually vote on this. So when we bring this back to council, we'll have a timeline that works and whether or not there are any budget implications from this from a resourcing perspective.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you. Just to clarify then, does this necessitate opening up the land use bylaw then in a bigger way than it's harder to just limit. When you open up a bylaw, anything can be brought forward and some things lead to something else, lead to something else, lead to something else. So that this does require the land use bylaw to be opened up.
Yes, that is correct, Madam Chair. It will have other consequences in terms of other policies, strategies that the city has adopted, maybe even into the MDP. Those are all things that we will bring as part of those considerations that you will understand everything that goes into what you're asking for.
Appreciate that. Thank you very much. Councillor Van Newkirk.
Thanks to Councillor Tessier for bringing this forward. Just two comments. The first is, for me, I don't know what I don't know about the housing market. I don't know what I don't know about housing types. There is one housing type that I have seen out there, but not in Beaumont, for instance. And that would be like a 3-story, right? So we talk about getting people in, using a smaller piece of land, but there is there's an ability to build, a third story up. We have a little bit of that in Beaumont, but not a lot. How do we explore? So if we're looking to eliminate one housing type to solve, or as part of a solution for other problems that we have, how do we make sure that we examine other available housing types that may provide a density positive solution? Does that fit in here? I think, and the reason I asked that is because last time the land use bylaw was in front of me, we had pictures of what things would look like. We had examples of what things would look like. And by and large, the concerns that we heard have been focused upon pictures that weren't in front of us. We saw pictures of duplexes, triplexes, fourplexes, but what I didn't see was a picture of a big house with 4 suites in it or 3 suites in it, right? So that was like, oh, okay, I see how that fits. So I guess, how do we make sure that we examine all the other housing types available before we go in limiting a type? Horrible question, not well worded, but I'm trying to get a thought out here.
Councillor Van Newkirk, is it, do you see one of these questions, one of these bullets perhaps answering that question, or would you like
No.
to add a bullet? I don't think.
If I added a bullet, it would like explore available housing types that would positively impact density targets. Or explore the ones that explore available housing types, not currently used in Beaumont that could positively impact density, and then you might get into these, the skinnier 3-story with the garage underneath that still gets you a decent square
I
footage.
hear you, but I think this is trying to fix what we already have, and that seems to be taking us down a different road. No, I don't know if we can
No,
fit
I
it
know
in here.
that-
Ms.
that- and that's
Pajaya, do
what-
you see a way that we could, or should that be another motion?
Maybe it doesn't belong here, and I should.
Maybe it's
go out
another
of it.
motion.
Yeah. I don't know.
To me, it's nothing wrong with where you're going there. I just don't see it.
No, I
as
know.
being-
And
This is trying to fix existing
This is a
policies,
this is a list of things that are addressing concerns we've heard.
and you're
Right.
looking at.
And this doesn't fit that mold. So let me pause that thought for now. I'll see if I can bring it up later
Okay,
in a
appreciate
different
that.
way. So the last bullet point, limiting the number of business related vehicles allowed for home-based businesses. Councillor Tessier, can you just speak to the problems that have been brought up that one is trying to achieve? I'm just wondering if we have to hone in on that one a little more or not, and maybe if you can remind me some of the feedback that brought that forward, that might be helpful. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Tessier.
Yeah, great question, Councillor Van Newkirk. Just for, say you own a landscaping company and you have 3 trucks and a trailer and a Bobcat, should that be allowed to park on half your driveway over the sidewalk and 3 parking stalls on the street, right, to run your business? We heard a lot of that in there. And I saw Leduc add just, you can only have 1 vehicle per residence for your home-based business that represents your home-based business. So you're only allowed 1 vehicle, and it can't be like a heavy ton vehicle. It has to be like a single regular truck or anything like that. So that's kind of where that's coming from. And I think that's a lot of this is going to alleviate the parking issues, right? If we have 4 suites instead of 1, the parking restrictions are going to look completely different. If we have one vehicle allowed for that home-based businesses on the major businesses, that's going to alleviate just overrunning those garages for home-based businesses. So that's kind of where it came from. Hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, I think I'll probably leave that for now. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Van Newkirk and Councillor Tessier. Mayor Daniluk.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I agree with Sam's first question. Read my mind. We read that question, and the answer you provided, Ms. Raymond, was very good. I'm happy with that. I do agree with the last point on the motion in front of us. There's a couple of places where I think they are not a home-based business. They're a business that's using the parking slot on the street and the driveway for a business, they shouldn't be there. It's not a home-based business. It should be at a proper location as a business, not on a residential street. I appreciate that last point. My only concern is March 2023, to use your words, Councillor Tessier, it's a lot there. There's a lot there. And can it get done by March? We were talking April before and we added a bunch of stuff to it. I can't see being done by March. If administration feels March 23rd is okay, or March of 2023 is okay, I don't think it's going to be based on the additions we've done here now. And I'd rather have the report come back in a timely fashion that administration feels they can deliver that in a timely fashion, the information we're going to get. So I would be curious, administration can comment on the March 2023 unless.
Ms. Pujaya,
council
would you like
feels-
to respond?
Thank you, Madam Chair, through you to Mayor Daniluk. Thank you for the question. Administration does have serious concerns about that timeline. These are complicated matters that do have a lot of consequences and implications. I understand that administration would prefer a little leniency on the timeline. And I think end of May is what I hear from my friends in planning and development. You know, if we could make that change, then this motion could be added to the consent agenda for the next council meeting, which might simplify the process and just let administration start on that work because it is fairly significant.
Thank you for that, Ms. Pujaya. And I would think as well that these are not issues that necessarily are going to be short-term. They have long-term implications, and I'd rather take the time and not rush it and find out that we've made some serious mistakes here with developers, et cetera. So I would like to see that timeline extended. Councillor Tessier, it's your motion. Yeah.
it up because of the parking study.
Yeah, sorry, I don't have you on here. Where are you?
So Councillor Tessier, before I make it a change, our public amendment, you're okay with making it in May? It is your motion in front of, okay, thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Monkoff-Swain, you have something to say?
Yeah, so I just want to be clear on process here. So by voting for this tonight, all I'm voting for is to bring this back to the next council meeting. Next council meeting, I expect administration to come forward with their professional opinion about what this means. So I personally would not like to see it on the consent agenda because there are some things in here that I could look at maybe, but my vote tonight, and I will be voting in favor to get it to the next meeting. But I got strong concerns with this. And so if it's on the consent agenda, then obviously I could just pull it off. But I would like administration to come forward in that next council meeting to share what the impact of this is, what the impact to the land use bylaw is, and all the statutory requirements around that. So I'm good with this. I'll vote for this, but just to be clear to my council here is I'm voting to get it to the next step. And then I'd really like to understand the impact of what we're asking here of administration. So no question there, just a comment. I saw some head nods. Sorry. Yeah.
Ms. Pujaya, would you like to say something?
Sure. I just want to clarify the process and thank you for the question. It is a good question. Because this is committee of the whole, you're correct. Committee of the whole is making this recommendation to council, but I would not expect that administration would start any work on this report until council approves it. So administration would not be in a position at the January 10th meeting to say, these are good ideas, these are not good ideas. Like they might be able to speak to some of them just based on their knowledge, but they are not going to start to do the research and the work. So of course, council can have further discussion because council will need to debate this motion and either approve it, amend it, or defeat it as council sees fit.
Councillor Monkoff-Swain.
Yeah, so I'm aware of that. So I'm not expecting or asking administration to come back in January with their thoughts on this. You know, I asked that earlier, and we'll get their thoughts on this in May, their professional opinion. But the impact of this, how much time it's going to take for administration, those are the sort of questions I would like administration to come back is, you know, if we're asked, this to me looks like a significant amount of work. And if I just want to make sure that there is an opportunity for administration to say, oh, and by the way, you asked us to do these 10 other things. if you ask us to do this, these things are canceled out. So more of a workload versus, these three ideas are not great. Does that make sense?
Ms. Raymond?
Through the chair to Councillor Monkhoff-Swain, yes, I think that makes sense. Just in terms of what that looks like, maybe we can have a little bit more conversation about that. I do want to clarify one thing in terms of the implications. Are you looking for us to have consulted with our friends in the development industry as we're preparing these, or is this just strictly upon what we think? So I'm just wondering what sort of engagement might be expected as part of this.
So based on, again, process where we are, I don't expect you guys to do any work.
No, I don't mean for the January. I mean as part of this report, sorry.
Yeah, well, I'd defer it to the gentleman who made the motion. Yeah, I'd like.
Councillor Tessier, do you have a thought on that?
Sorry, what's the exact question on that?
Using these questions taken into the developers and consulting with them on the implications.
Are you prepared to put additional money for administration to fund this ask? Is essentially the question.
Well, that's going a little bit
Well,
further than what she asked, but that's
what
To
he's
me,
asking.
we just did a huge engagement on what we're currently doing, right? So for me to ask the developers, like they're gonna think of themselves, from what I understand, it's the only thing that would affect the developers would be the zero lot lines. That'd be one major thing that would affect how they do their job and how they develop. The rest is just pretty much resident related.
Councillor Tessier, and if I could, Ms. Raymond, one of my questions was, are we going to be opening up the land use bylaw? And your answer was yes, in fact, we are, if we make changes on these things.
If
We do that, then we are open to consultation because it's a bylaw.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, so at that point, yes, we would be open
Yeah,
to
I
that there.
wouldn't want a developer to say you didn't even ask and you made changes, so that would be wrong.
Yes, and there would be that aspect into the update of the land use bylaw itself, right? It would come with its public hearing, all of that sort of stuff, but there is a certain amount as we're affecting their business and as their partners in the development of this community. Some of these things that we would be doing here would be impacting them, maybe a little bit more than we might think in terms of the dwelling units and the zero lot lines and those sorts of things in terms of their marketability and what they had thought, but we're also probably going to be impacting their area structure plans. So there is some impacts that they would actually need to be addressing. So just wanted to get some clarity on how far you wanted us to take this report. I don't want that to come back later and say, didn't.
So we can
Look at
have
that.
further discussion in January. Councillor Tessier, then you're good. Councillor Van Newkirk.
Yeah, one last question, just of administration on that first bullet point. Earlier, I spoke about adding the impact of increased enforcement. So I'm thinking that, addressing congestion of parking, encouraging parking garages and alleviating street congestion. I'm guessing that in there, the topic of enforcing parking would be a piece of that. Is that correct? Or do we need to add that language into that bullet point?
What we see online. Oh. Thank you. Sorry. Okay, I think Mike Schwartz is joining us. Hi, Mike.
Yes, hi. I've been with you all along here. I just want to, Councillor Monkhoff-Swain brings up a really good point, and Sandy, I hope I'm not about to screw up your process here. There's a boatload of work here, and I will point out, and it'll come out in the report, that each one of those items does impact a developer. Every single thing that is on that list affects their product. So this has got to be done properly, and it's going to take some resources. So as long as we understand that we are going to come back in January with a report that's going to talk about, and Kendra, you weigh in here because I'm winging this one, that is going to identify the resources required and the projected timeline. So this may not be on the radar. It may not work. What I'm looking at here is basically a land use bylaw redo. And that's got a whole bunch of ramifications and a whole bunch of work. I'm not saying it's not good work. That's not my point. I want us to be able to do it properly and effectively. And that's going to take time. So without being directed in committee, we need to be directed in regular, as we all know. So that would be the report that I would expect. And maybe we need another motion, Sandy. I know you're ready to kill me, but I'm safely at home, so you can't. That directs us to bring back that information on how long we think this is going to take, how much we think it's going to cost.
Thank you very much, Mr. Schwartz. Sandy, would you like to respond?
Sure. First of all, it's not my process. This is council's process. It's following the procedures.
We know that
in
you're trying to be
bylaw.
extremely helpful, and you are.
So,
You get
I don't have that kind of power. To be fair, I appreciate where our CAO is coming from, and he's quite right. This is a significant undertaking, but administration can bring that kind of report to council at any time if we require resources. Right now, what's in front of committee of the whole is a recommendation from the committee to council. So administration would not be preparing a report. However, to our CAO's point, which is well taken, if we do get to a point as administration and realize we're going to need these resources for consulting, we're going to need this timeline, then we would come back to council with those requests.
I think we're seeing that it might be a foregone conclusion. That's kind of why we're wondering if we can move this along by making that part of this process. Ms. Bajaya, do you want to respond to that?
Sure, we could also modify this so that it is a two-step process, so that we have an initial report with the cost implications and timelines to make this,
If the mover,
provided that the
yeah.
mover is willing to make that
Councillor
change.
Tessier, would you be okay if we added the request that we're talking about to your motion? This is just to remind you, we have another item after this one. Repeat the question. Ms. Bajaya, would you like to maybe pose what that might look like? You probably haven't written it yet. Oh, I have to give you the right to speak. There you go.
So Councillor Tessier, basically what is being proposed is that we would have administration as a first step, bring a report earlier than May to say the scope of this work and the resources required are X. And this is the timeline that we could deliver it in. So I would have to modify the motion somewhat to make that happen. But if you're willing to make that, accept that as a friendly amendment, we could do that. If you don't want to accept that as a friendly amendment, another member of the committee could move the amendment. The amendment would be voted upon, and then we would go from there.
Councillor Tessier, would you like to respond to that? Would you want to hear from Councillor Monkoff-Swain first?
Sure, I'll hear from other councillors. I need a moment to process
Yes,
anyway.
think about that. Oh, you have to shut off your mic so I can give Councillor Monkoff-Swain the right to speak. There you go.
So I'm strongly in favor of this two-step process, and the reason why is if we get the report back on the resourcing impact before budget, then we can actually vote on that as part of the budget process, right? So I would imagine that the recommendation would go back and say, hey, come back and tell us how much this is going to cost us, how much resources to do these type of things, get that report. And then at that time through budget, if we think that's a good idea, we include that as part of the budget package, right? As opposed to going all the way out till May and they come back and like, yeah, this is a terrible idea. And we have to go back and relook at the budget. So yeah, I think the two steps are bring us a report on how much or what the resourcing impact it is to look at those points that you've laid out. And then at budget, we have the discussion. And if you get 4 votes at budget, then we're doing it. And if you don't, then we're not. So I think that's why this makes sense. It's a little bit clunky, but I like this. I like this way.
Councillor Tessier?
Yep. Yeah, that's fine by me, understanding what it's going to cost. I think, yeah, it should be a no-brainer budget. We don't do a huge land use bylaw review and get hundreds of respondents and then say not to put in the budget. So to me, it's a redundancy, but if that's what it's going to do to get it through, then at least we'll see it before budget if it's an excessive amount. So, yep, I'm good with the amendment.
Thank you. Ms. Bujaya, would we be able to see the motion on the screen? There's a lot going on over there. We put a lot on your plates tonight. Appreciate that. What's that? You did, and I heard it. I'm eating chocolate. It's helping me. Do we need another recess, Ms. Bujaya, or are we okay? We're good. We're good? Oh, I'm sorry, I was hearing you
No,
just
it's
fine.
So I'm hearing from Ms. Raymond that if we could refer this matter to the January 24th council meeting, we could be in a position to answer those questions regarding scope, resourcing, timing. So we're trying to find the most elegant, simple way of putting this on the floor. So why don't we refer this motion to the January 24th council meeting, and administration would be able to speak to it then. I just have to make a minor change.
So we're not voting on this motion here today. Is that what you're saying?
We would have this go to the January 24th council meeting. So
Committee, council.
yes, and administration would be prepared. So we could leave the motion as is. And we would just simply put it on the January 24th council meeting rather than the January 10th. And administration would be able to speak to the timeline, cost, and scope at that time.
So my only question is, do we need to vote on this now?
Yes, we still need to vote on whether we want to make this recommendation to council. And what I will do, just for clarity's sake, I'll put at the January 24th meeting.
The missing piece, though, is the part about the cost and the scope. I hear you be bringing it back, but that's not in this motion.
I realize it's not explicitly in the motion, but administration will be prepared to answer those questions at the January 24th meeting as part of council's debate on the motion. And then if council, if there's a need to add budget, council can do it at that time. If there's a need to amend the timelines, council could do it at that time.
Okay. So if council committee members are ready to vote on this, no further questions, I will call for the vote. And Councillor Tessier, you did move it correctly. You did say, yes, you moved it. Okay, please vote. And I will stop the vote, and that passes unanimously 6-0. Okay, thank you very much. We are done with the first presentation for tonight. We have a second one now. And moving on to my agenda here. No, it's about traffic enforcement. Traffic safety bylaw, automated traffic enforcement. Chief Melvin will come up. Melvin will come up. We're going to go easy on you, Chief. Okay, I will, but the rest may not. There we go. Thank you very much. You have the floor. Just have to put on your mic or not going on. There it is. Okay. Okay.
Well, good evening, Madam Chair, members of council. Once again, I'm extremely happy to be here again, carrying on our discussion over the finishing up our points on the draft of the traffic safety bylaw. Some feedback from our last meeting, some questions that you may have had. We've dug up some quick answers that we'll go over those. We've attached in the council package for this evening's meeting, probably a more easier on the eyes of how the traffic safety bylaw is going to look. Once again, we're not looking to vote on this. It's pretty much for you to have a look at it, and then we'll be coming back to council in January for first reading and any further on that. So once that is done, obviously, if there's any questions on our current format or some things you want us to bring back before first reading or discussion at first reading, we can definitely go through then. Once that is done, we're going to transition right into the automated traffic enforcement program review. Majority of my slides are kind of tailored to that. So right now I'll just go through some of the feedback from questions when it related to the traffic safety bylaw on that comparison chart that we brought in November. One of the questions that we start off with was RVs being parked too close. The regulation states pretty much 5 meters is all that safety thing. So 5 meters from intersections, 5 meters from sidewalks, 5 meters from fire hydrants. That's the Traffic Safety Act piece of it. So that's where that 5 meters is there. So there's no real change for that. There was a question on exempt vehicles. Oh, sorry. Just before that, the definition of RV, does that mean a motorhome? Yes, that's in the definitions. You can see through that on the definitions page that motorhome is included in that umbrella of RV. Exempt vehicles, we did add clarity to include the ATE as a city-owned vehicle performing municipal services. So that'll be pushed in there. Idling, we did change that to 15 minutes. And we wanted to consider and take into account in temperature. But right now we didn't consider temperature with 15 minutes. We think on a day like today, you know what, education is the best recipe for this. We're not going out and telling people that, you know what, you're at 16 minutes, you got to shut down. You know what, we got to leave some ability for officers to do that. Extension cords, we did include the option for the mat as an option. So if it makes it a little easier for residents. Playground zones, school zones, and speed limits. We changed the zones to playground zones. We added that the power of the CO to establish speed limits and post signs. So obviously for our newer area going into West Rec, what's that going to look like? Elan, all those things as those get pushed out, and the development piece, the CO can do those, so they don't have to go through a lengthy process. Golf carts, we wanted to add the ability for residents to load and offload. E-bikes, full-size scooters, 150C motorbikes. So e-bikes are considered bikes, need to follow the same rules, no riding on sidewalks, things like that. E-scooters can be on the skywalks. Prohibited from operating at unreasonable speeds for nature of road or sidewalks or trails. Once again, that unreasonable speed is determined by the community peace officer. And for congested areas like downtown, we would place signage prohibiting any type of use. So in the center area. School buses, there was a concern on one school bus that there wasn't enough turning radius once they left the school site to get back onto the roadway. So we'll address that with the parking of signs, and that'll be done. So it'll allow both egress and ingress into that area, so the bus can actually make the turn. And we'll put up some no parking signs there, and that'll be done. One of the last two questions was engine retarder brakes. This is already in the bylaw. Signage will be installed coming into the city to ensure that that's taken care of. The last one was a question about helmets on kids. How do you enforce that? Anything 16 years and older, they can enforce it directly. Anything 16 years and under, typically back to the parents. More of an education piece, but that's really where that comes from. So hopefully that captures all the questions that were asked. Like I said, if you had a chance to go through the bylaw, like I said, it'll be a little easier to read and understand how the bylaw is going to be set out. We still need to do some numbering and some formatting pieces, but hopefully what you're seeing for is in the context and the changes that are going to be asked for, that you've asked for, are in there. I am open to any questions. If you specifically have any questions related to the traffic safety bylaw, if it's related to automated traffic enforcement, if we can deal with that until we go through on our slideshow, if that would be all right for the committee. So.
Oh,
Sorry, Mayor Daniluk.
yes. Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Chief Melvin. Appreciate that. Just one quick question. I know you probably touched on, but just to clarify. So on the recreational vehicles, which the RVs, of course, people, trailers in front of their house, they can be there for 72 hours. When it has to be moved completely off the roadway. It can't be moved 6 feet or 10 feet down the way in front of their neighbor's house. It's got to be moved literally off the street.
Offsite. The only other option is if you can fit it on your garage pad. You don't
Right.
have a lot of cars on there, or obviously you can there if it's within the regulation. But the rules say that you have to take it off the roadway. Can't go around the block. Can't go park at a buddy's house.
Right.
Unless you. So the intent is that, you know what, bring your RV, load it up to go camping, go enjoy your weekend, come back, unload it, bring it back to the storage lot. Or if you've got space on your thing, that's the whole intent here, is to try to shift that culture in, you know what? So we don't have any issues.
Yeah, that's fine. Appreciate that for clarification. Thank you.
Councillor Van Newkirk.
Yeah, just to further on that one, there are instances where, you know, people will take the RV and perpendicular it to their house across front lawn and grass and all of that. Is that acceptable with what we're looking at right now, or will that be an enforceable issue as well?
Through the chair to Councillor Van Newkirk, no, you can't park it on your lawn or back it in. That actually crosses into the land use bylaw piece. We get any complaints from the public, we'll address them accordingly. So.
Yeah, no, I'm looking forward to doing this, and thanks for providing the clarity on the definition of an RV to provide clarity on the motorhome. It's there's no question now, so I appreciate that.
Thank you. Councillor Monkoff Swain.
Yeah, thanks. So I'll apologize in advance for these questions. You're going to say, you know, see section X or page Y. Off the top, you mentioned RVs or any type of vehicle within 5 meters of a crosswalk. Point to me in here where that is, and just explain, because the discussion last time was, as you know, there's large vehicles, whether it's RVs or whatever, that are parking, you know, 5 meters away, but still completely impede the view of the crosswalk. So explain to me how we're managing that in here.
So through the chair to Councillor Monkoff Swain, within the Traffic Safety Act, it states that within 5 meters from the front of a vehicle. So if it's in front of a car, if it's in front of our RV, it's still from the front of that vehicle to the crosswalk. They determine that in the act that is clear enough based on, you know what, speed and on driving through our neighborhoods. One of the big things that is obviously that we may need to expand on, depending on what the area is, you know, how does that really look at the area that we're in? Do we need to, based on, because there's a crosswalk and then there's a quick turn and then there's a cul-de-sac and then there's a school? Well, you know what, maybe through us in engineering that, hey, we've identified this as a problem in the community. Maybe we need to put no parking zones farther back, but once again, we need to justify what that reason is.
Right.
We just can't go blanket out and go, okay, it's got to be more than 5 meters. Case by case, we will look at that case by case. If there's enough data to support one, concern from the residents, concern from council, we have obviously a collision or risk concern that we've had a whole bunch of near misses. We just don't want to do something based on initial complaint or concern, or okay, well, what's the reasoning behind it? So those can all be looked at, and if there's certain things in the community where we need to, like we said, hey, we need to have more of a setback for school buses to get out, we can set those parameters
Yeah.
But obviously that'll have a ripple effect on parking and other things within the community. So.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And thanks, Council, for sharing the section there. I guess my challenge is that I can't, when I read through this, and it's been a few days, but I can't see the discretion there, right? So again, I could take you out or Bylaw out to show a spot where an RV consistently parks in front and you know, RV, any vehicle, and it blocks the sidewalk and it's dangerous because you come down, you can't see anyone coming out. What mechanism in here would you guys have to be able to implement change for that particular area? The way I read it is none, because they're going to say, well, we're 5 meters back, tough luck.
Well, through the chair to Councillor Muckhoff-Swain, obviously that's a specific concern within the community. I wouldn't be able to give you a detailed answer right now, as in this is a concern for that you can't
So let
physically see or
let me rephrase the question. Can we add some opportunity for discretion in here that talks about, you know, within 5 meters of crosswalk, or you know, or that is visually impacting the safety of the site? Just something to give us a bit more flexibility, so that if there is an issue here that we community think should be addressed, that you can point to, you know, section 4C, as opposed to. I think this is very black and white, and I understand that's what bylaws are for, to give you that clarity. But my worry is there are some safety issues around our community around this, and a lot of them will just point to 4A and 4B and call it a day, and there's nothing we can do.
I guess if I can leave you with this thought, if we can definitely take that back and have a quick discussion and get some quick feedback on the legality of pushing that in and how we would actually word it if it would be deemed as flexible. But absolutely, I can quickly take that back, quick answer, and have it prior to
Council meeting.
prior to the next council meeting. So you're a little bit more comfortable with that. And I understand that. I know what the bylaw states, but yes, we need to have that ability that, oh, now there's a new concern that came up based on whatever, that we can address it accordingly. So
Okay.
for sure, I can
Thank
get
you.
those answers for you.
Yeah, no, and everything else, I mean, you managed all of our questions and reported back really well. So thanks for that.
Ms. Dargy, did you want to weigh in on that question?
Thank you, Chair. Through to Councillor Muckhoff-Swain. If I might add, I'm not sure if this answers your question of the way I'm understanding it. Section 4, 5, and 6 start off, unless a traffic control device permits or requires, a vehicle shall not be parked. So if we sign it to a location that there's no parking, then that traffic control device regulates that parking. If there's no traffic control device, then the 5 meters is the standard. Does that answer your question?
Councillor Muckhoff-Swain.
That does perfectly.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Van Newkirk.
Yeah, something else that could be considered there would be a 4C, Councillor Muckhoff-Swain, and you know, it could be, you know, it would be, what does it say? Unless a traffic control device permits or requires, a vehicle shall not be parked, 4C, in a manner that obstructs the visibility of the crosswalk. Right? Like if we could, you know, if there was an addition like that, I think then that might provide, you know, that might provide that level of discretion. So just a thought.
Are you suggesting a change, Councillor Van Newkirk? I'm not sure I'm on the same page as you are there.
Yeah, I can suggest an addition. I kind of don't want to do, I don't like to do this on the fly, but I definitely can. You know, what I would suggest would be 4C, and it would read in a manner that obstructs the visibility of the crosswalk. But I don't know the implications of that, right? Like I would prefer that admin would review that language to see if it's,
Is that
satisfactory.
sufficient?
Through the chair to Councillor Van Newkirk. This goes on to just to follow up on Councillor Muckhoff-Swain's question. Obviously, the point is that if the traffic control device is there, you can't park, or if it's not there, it's 5 meters. But
Yep.
How do you get the traffic control device there if you don't identify that there's a risk? I understand that. What's the process of actually getting that concern that the 5 meters doesn't work? So we can easily put some type of clause in there, understanding that it's 5 meters unless there's a sign there. Well, how do we get a sign there? What needs to happen to get the sign there, right? So I think that's where, and I don't want to put words in council's mouth, but I think that's how do you get to that process? So we can likely put some literature around that unless it's identified. I will talk to LLS as they're the experts in the legal jargon when it comes to this, but I guess the piece on how do we actually make a change if we determine that 5 meters doesn't work because of whatever.
Yeah, the more cost-effective way to do that would be by adding a clause C and not having to put signage up, right? So that might give you discretion, but what I don't know is what other problems could that cause, right? So that's why I'm not going to propose that right now, but you know, I'm saying a potential option could be 4C in a manner that obstructs the visibility of the crosswalk. So anyways, I'll leave it at that.
So you'll bring that back?
Yeah.
In terms of the.
For the chair, yes. I'll talk to my colleagues here and see if there's a way we can easily adjust that. But obviously, if it's a specific crosswalk of concern, that obviously we need to know that information so that we can address it. But if there's some language in there that meets council's intention and we can quickly get it in there, then we will have it added in there for first reading. So.
Ms. Dargy, I cut you off here, but did you want back in? You're good. Okay. Councillor McCook.
Thank you. In regards to the RVs, I know Councillor Van Newkirk talked about ones that are perpendicular and stuff. Does it cover RVs that fit on the driveway? Are those ones okay?
Yes, if I recall correctly, you can park it on your driveway. I can't remember. I believe so, but I would have to get back to you on the clear down what the language was within it. So that may cross over into a bit of the land use piece. So.
Okay, no problem. Thank you. And then can you just reiterate, maybe for the public as well, why are we looking at reducing all the speed limits to 30 Ks and considering them school ground or playgrounds, all the school zones and everything inclusively?
Okay, through the chair to Councillor McCook. One of the questions or things that we're seeing out of the community is that kids are in playground zones or typically in school zones that are at 430, not considered in that speed limit, but the risk is still there. Major municipalities, Edmonton, Calgary have gone playground zones because they know kids are out later and to try to keep that risk down because the risk is not tied to at 430 all the kids kind of go away. So knowing that pros and cons of that because it's slower speed limits in the community. I think for the safety of our youth that it's a step in the right direction and allows those zones to be extended from an hour's perspective. And at the end of the day, parents now know that you know what, if there's concern with speeding, there's kids that are in those zones after school hours. We can consider those. And as new areas come online, as new schools are built, we can transition those right to playground zones right off from the beginning. So I understand there may be a push that, well, school ends at 4:30 or whatever, and then at 6 o'clock I should be able to go, but kids are still there because we know that they're out longer, they're out in those rink areas, and the schools have really bolstered their playground equipment over the years. That we see it from just a risk prevention that we don't want any kids getting knocked down or struck at 6 in the evening on a school night during the summertime. This is what the request was. So this is the request based on our risk analysis when it comes to these areas.
No, that's great. Thank you for that clarity. I
Ms. George,
definitely
you would
agree.
like to weigh in on it as well?
Sure.
Sorry, thank you, Chair, through to Councillor McCook. I have an answer to your question about parking over
Yeah.
the driveway. So the definition of highway includes a sidewalk. And there is a clause in the bylaw that prohibits parking over a highway unless there's a permit. So it does include a sidewalk.
Okay, but if it fits on the driveway, then they're
That's
clear.
fine. Yeah.
Okay, as long as it doesn't overhang.
Correct.
Okay, perfect. Thank you for that. And yeah, thank you for that explanation. I appreciate that. And I definitely understand why we're doing that. Just wanted some clarity, potentially for the public as well, because I know in the survey and stuff, there were some questions about that. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor McCook. Not seeing any other questions about that part of your presentation. We'll move on to the automated traffic enforcement.
Outstanding. Already.
You have a slideshow for us?
We could. So for the public and for the committee, the next part is to go through the automated traffic enforcement program, try to give you some context, both from an operational standpoint, from a business standpoint, from a traffic safety standpoint, and trying to look at this through several different lenses, so that we try to provide you with as much information as possible. So. So obviously this is what we were tasked to do. Traffic safety bylaw. We've completed that review. Automated traffic enforcement program. This was done during this year. Some of the timelines that we've used, just to refresh. Where am I pointing? Or if maybe Stacy, you can.
Not working.
Nope. Is it? Hello? No, not Sean. Some of the timelines where we kind of started at the beginning of this year was that review of the traffic safety bylaw, the input, the traffic safety plan. We did the legal review and the engagement, the Q3 results for the engagement for the TSB and the ATE review. Right now we're at Q4 plus, I guess you could call it, where we situate, and it comes to the automated traffic enforcement program review. Next slide, please. So just some context, the community of Beaumont approved photo radar back in June of 2006. Criteria included, but not restricted to high risk, high frequency, and high collision locations. It was essential that photo radar was used in conjunction with existing conventional enforcement and not to be used as a replacement for officer contact. So that's not the whole intent, is to just put photo radar out there and we don't have anybody out discussing things with the public. From a provincial level, ATE governs, the guideline governs how municipalities and law enforcement agency employ photo radar. So some municipalities use a contractor to do photo radar. Some municipalities use their own staff and their own equipment to do photo radar. How it kind of worked for us is up until 2019, Global Traffic Group was the contractor of choice. And then in 2019 to 2020 time period, the RFP went out and Conduit Business Service Canada are our current contract. What their duties are, they provide mobile services for 40 hours per week. They set the speed tolerance for photo radar and laser. ISDs are intersection safety devices, so red lights, red light cameras, things like that. As directed in writing by the City of Beaumont's RCMP detachment commander and in consulting with the city. So when these things are set, it's just not City of Beaumont, it's the staff sergeant down at the RCMP with the discussion with protective services and city administration, municipal enforcement. Collectively as a team, we look at all these areas and set these. So they also perform the services only at sites directed by the city and the RCMP. So they can't go to, in theory, a rogue site because they know it's going to be more violations or higher fines or whatever that is. And they're required as part of the contract to provide all personnel, tools, vehicle equipment, materials required to perform these services. Next, please. So the contract itself, April 1st is when it was signed and enforced up until May 31st. It could be extended. There's a clause in there to extend it 2 years past March 31st, 2025. It may be terminated for any reason after delivery of written notice to either party, 180 days notice. So 6 months notice of the intended termination date. In the event that the city terminates the agreement within the first 3 years, the city agrees to compensate Conduit for all fees and any costs associated with early termination of subcontracts, any unamortized cost of equipment, software, and materials that they procure to provide the service to us here. And then any reasonable necessary wind down costs or other costs that may be associated with it as part of that piece. Now, looking at today's date is December of 2022. So that 3-year time period where we wouldn't have to pay would be, you know what, post April 1st, 2023, right? So that's that piece where this this compensate piece of the contract would not be enforceable. During the term of the agreement and based on mobile service 40 hours per week, the city will pay Conduit monthly fees of $29.38 per each violation issued. That's not per photo taken. It needs to be clear, vetted, gone through a process that yes, a violation actually occurred. We're going to send this off to the province to issue a ticket. That's when that is considered a violation. If the blurry or license plate was obscured or whatever, there wouldn't be a compensation for a ticket because a violation wasn't issued because it was in theory a ticket that wasn't enforceable. So here is our locations. We have 10 red lights, we have 8 speed zones, we have 23 stop signs, and we have 20 designated zones. We don't have any intersection safety devices as per what you would see in Edmonton, where you've got a camera sitting at ours. Ours are all mobile within some type of vehicle. Next, please. So here it's just, back up. Here's, I know the map is kind of small, but on your document, you can really zoom in on it. You can see where our locations are for the city on that presently. And then we'll talk about as the city grows, how does new locations or new areas of development come in. Next slide, please. So once again, ATE sites are not selected randomly. One or more of the following criteria must be met before automated traffic enforcement technology is deployed to a specific site. So areas or intersection where conventional enforcement is unsafe or ineffective. Areas of intersections with an identifiable documented history of collisions. Areas of intersections with identifiable documented history of speeding problems. Intersections with identifiable documented history of offenses. Intersections near schools, post-secondary. Other areas where high pedestrian volumes, schools and playground zones, and construction zones. So these areas here have been identified as higher risk than other areas that we would need some type of enforcement. And we'll talk about that a little later. Year to date for 2022. Now this, going back, this was brought forward in November. So this is likely kind of mid-October numbers. We still have some more data to collect between now and the end of the year. So violations year to date, so 76 red lights, 1,006 stop signs, 1,554 speeding violations in the community. And obviously this year has been a big change with the government with ATE. Some of the statistics that you're seeing, so this has only been broken down since 2022. If you were to go back 2021, 19, back in previous years, the data wasn't as specific as this. We could likely get it, but it would take a significant timeline for them to go back to, you know what, maybe 3,000 violations ago. Okay, well, how many were speeds? And how many were speeds in school zones? And so really some of the changes that we've seen this year is that providing that more specific data so that residents and council and administration know specifically, okay, do we have a red light issue in our community? Do we have a stop sign issue? Do we have a speeding issue, or do we have all three? And that's how that data was done. So one of the changes that obviously we talked about in traffic safety bylaw was to change that playground zones to extending those hours. This would actually impact our 26 existing zones that are cut off at that time limit. And we would have the ability to review and add additional zones in the future, as we talked about before, as playgrounds and school zones or schools are built. Those zones can be added in the future. So that gives you a really broad, quick understanding of ATE when it talks about how zones are done, where zones are, and currently how many we have up to date. So now let's kind of transition into, okay, well, what's that cost? Let's now look at the business side of what this service provides to mitigate the identified risk. So we've identified a risk that we have all these high collisions areas. We wanted to get these areas monitored. So in 2021, this is how many tickets were issued, 3,341. Value of tickets issued. So if you just based on a pure value, if any of you have ever got a speeding ticket or any other type of violation, you'll know that there'll be a value on it of what the ticket is worth, predetermined. Third-party fees, that is the contractor's fees, and how much based on those tickets, you do that calculation, that's how much the contractor would received in 2021 for providing that level of service to us, to the community. The funding before the Alberta fee. Now, the Alberta fee, the fee that we give to the government, that 40%, a portion of that, I think it's on a following slide, a portion of that will be the Victims of Crime Fund that goes into. Obviously, there's the provincial government for monitoring the program, and then the remaining portion comes to us as a city. And that's that potential funding that is there. So that's 2021 comparing to 2022. You can see as we seem to be we'll probably be likely in the same area where we were last year when it comes to number of tickets issued, the value, third-party fees. So I wouldn't say it's going to be a mirror, but it'll be awfully close. I don't see any huge jumps. It will only until our community expands into Larev and expands to the south and to Elan that we'll start to see more. Next page, please. So we look at that provincial funding, grant funding, whatever you wish to call it, but the city is required to place that into an ATE program that is a restricted reserve. It doesn't go into general, in theory, using the term loosely, general coffers. Into something. It needs to go into restricted reserves and can only be used to fund traffic safety initiatives. So presently, as of October timeframe, there was 282,000 in the traffic safety reserve. And in recent years, up until this year, it's been used, as you can see, the traffic signal and wayfinding signage program within the city. Lighted crosswalks is another one. The big thing to capture out of this is these initiatives are no cost to the resident. There's no cost, there's no increase in taxes, there's no increase to any type of levy based on the traffic safety reserve. We do understand that there's some hidden costs for us administration to administer this, but if somebody needed a lighter crosswalk and we took it out of traffic safety reserve, that is something that was funded in theory by the ATE program. And even going larger scope, well, what's the percentage of that is actually Beaumont residents, right? Is that Leduc County? Is that Edmonton? Is that people outside our general area? Knowing the amount of traffic, I would guesstimate it's probably close to 50-50 within the community. Many members within our community know where the high risk areas are, right? So once again, that is just an opinion. There's an educated guess behind that, but I don't know the full breakdown. But knowing that the money that's used for the traffic safety program, that is the fund initiatives, does not cost the resident any money unless you received a friendly reminder in the mail. Next slide, please. So one of the common questions we got through the survey, and I field a lot of them from the public on ATE vehicles, things that are out there, is like, okay, well, the video in itself. The video, they use a specific camera that captures stoppage images when it comes to red lights, but you can actually watch the video of said vehicle just cruising past a stop sign or cruising through a red light. So that information is readily available, and that's a requirement as part of the program to be able to do that. The people that are in the vehicles, they're community peace officers. They're approved by the province to be in there. This year, December 1st of 2022, all the vehicles had to be increased signage, not to the Edmonton green wrap your complete vehicles. That was a requirement of the province. It was that it had to be signage that was approved by the province. So each contractor, municipality that was pushing forward to get their signage approved by the province. For hours, we posted out on social media and through our website of what the vehicles would look like if you see them in the community, and those have been approved by the province. So for us, Conduit went to the province and said, this is what, to meet your intent, this is what we've done for our vehicles. Does that meet your intent of your change coming December 1st? They approved it. Conduit went ahead and proceeded with that. That percentage piece, when we talked about, well, what that 40% is, so this is even more dialed down into the numbers. So, you know, that 41.67 of the total fine, 15% goes right towards victim services, 26% of the administrative goes to the government. So typically that 40-60 split is a good average of what we kind of use, and that victims of crime fund is a big piece for the government. Obviously, if there's a late penalty, the government gets receives all of that surcharge amount. We don't receive anything. Since December 1st of 2019, we are not allowed, and that has been extended. I know in my report it says extended till 2022. They've already came out and now extended it another year till 2023. So we're not allowed to install any new photo radar locations. We're not allowed to upgrade any of our existing photo radar devices, and we're not allowed to add any new equipment. So that's the restriction. The government says, no, you're not allowed to do it, because the process is, if we decided that, okay, we think this area right now is a high risk, we need to exhaust all measures presently before you're allowed to put in ATE. So you need to show on, okay, well, what traffic calming devices did you use? What programs did you run? Did you change any signage? Did you completely look at all aspects of the enforcement to reduce the risk? And then if that has been proven that there's no other option, then the province would sign off on ATE. So you see, it's been more restrictive when it comes to ATE and the challenges that it happens. So next slide, please. So a lot of the changes, as we talked about, December 2022, and we talked about the ones earlier, they're readily available on our webpage and through the Alberta ATE program website. So all existing locations will be reassessed. We've done that. We did that with Staff Sergeant Dollywall when he was here before he left. We went through all of it. We drove, all the sites to make sure, yeah, this still meets the intent. The risk is still present. All mobile radar vehicles would need to be wrapped to make sure. So that was that signage piece. There was a lot of pushback from contractors outside the city of Edmonton on the wrapping of all these vehicles and the cost to support that and be able to meet the timelines. So I'm assuming that they gave a little bit and allowed signage, drive safe signage on front and rear of vehicles still to be white, things like that. There's no requirement from the province unless dictated based on one of those zones through your risk assessment, put anything else I've heard, at flags or cones or signage or anything like that, unless it's deemed it would mitigate more of a risk. But we haven't had any discussions with the RCMP or through our AT contractor that would justify that in other than, well, we want to flag up. Well, okay, well, give us a reason why you want to flag up, or we want more signage on a vehicle. Well, the intent of the government, why are you asking the contractor to do that a little more? So, like I said, that freeze is extended now till 2023. And this will provide the opportunity for us to, as people that administer the program within the community, to look at some more data to determine how effective it is. You can see right now from a province perspective, they are scaling back ATE of what it used to be to where there's a lot more restrictions and there's a lot more control and oversight on how you're allowed to use this. That is a big piece to look at. So we've looked at and said through one lens that there's a risk in the community, that we need to have some type of enforcement. That was deemed by a whole bunch of assessment of factors. We've looked at, okay, we've identified a risk. We said that right now, who's going to mitigate that risk for us as a city and provide that level of safety to the residents. So we have two options. In theory, we have three options. You can get a contractor to mitigate that risk for you, which is what we've done. The city mitigates the risk, which means we hire more staff and we go out and do the enforcement. Or three, you disregard and accept the risk and have neither increased enforcement or ATE. That's really your three roles when it comes to those kind of risks from that standpoint. The business side of it, from a pure business lens, now looking at it from dollars and cents, the city has a return on the investment. We need to see that, okay, if we hire a contractor to do this, we're looking for something at the end that we can see as an investment. Our investment really on that is twofold. We have an investment of safety, we have increased enforcement in that area, and we have an investment of funding that we can fund other areas to make the community safe. That's when it comes to that piece. So it's very easy, and I can tell you, I'm sure you've heard it. I've heard it from many residents that this is a cash cow, that this proves nothing to do with traffic safety. But if you're just looking at, I sped, I got a violation, I don't like it. Okay, been there, done that, right? And I'm sure many other people have been in that role, but the traffic safety program provides added enforcement, supports our program of traffic safety with the RCMP, the municipal enforcement, and ourselves to provide that level of service to the community. At the time, it wasn't determined that the city would take on that role, so they contracted that service out to provide that level of risk for us. And at the same time, there is some additional benefit. Not only are we getting a contract to do it, but we're getting a return that we have, in theory, grant funding that we can fund projects in the community that doesn't cost a resident anything unless they were one of the persons that had the violation. So there's a big piece to that needs to be looked at. So the flip side of that, if you remove photo radar, you have the increased risk. It's not like you can go, okay, we have 40 hours of enforcement. We're just going to have a full CPO do 40 hours. What you're missing is that it does take time for the officer to get out of the car, to go talk to the residents, get all the information, go back to the car, complete the violations, where somebody within that automated world is just all electronic, snapshot, video, whatever it is, quickly download, assess, and that process is a little quicker. So in theory, could you replace a CPO directly one-for-one with the photo radar contract and get the same level of coverage? No, because you're not going to get all that done in 40 hours in a work week, right? What that'll be, maybe 1.5, maybe 1.25, but it definitely is not going to be a direct CPO one versus ATE contract. You're not going to see the same. If the city takes over and just uses CPO, obviously that's an implication to operations. So somebody's got to pay for it. right? So right now, under the ATE contract, in theory, the violations pay for themselves and we get a return on investment that we can focus ourselves back into the community. At the end of this, we are one of 26 municipalities that use automated traffic enforcement for our community to assist with our traffic safety in the community. Yes, it is and will continue to be a topic that I receive calls on every week. I try to provide them with every specific lens of how you're looking at what this program kind of does. And I'll leave it at that. A lot of information. I know you probably have several questions. Hopefully I can address some of your concerns or the questions you may receive from the members. So I'll leave it at that. Sorry for a little long in the tooth, but I just want to make sure that that I talked about every lens that it comes through. So
Thank you very much. That was a well done presentation. I appreciate it, Chief. So, Councillor McCook, would you like to ask a question or make a comment?
Thank you. Mine's more is just a comment. That report was really well done, and I think you did a really great job of going into the importance of ATE in our community as well as what it funds. As you said, I think a lot of people don't have that understanding. So you just have the understanding if I get a ticket and I'm frustrated. So I think seeing that it also then turns around and helps to make our communities safer is really important. Just on, I know there's been complaints or people have noticed just sometimes where the vehicles are parked. Can you just comment on that?
through the chair to Councillor McCook. When I started here a little over a year ago, there was some concerns that needed to be addressed on where they were parking. One of the things obviously is in wintertime that they can't park on the where they would normally park in the summertime. So we've addressed those concerns that in the event that their location that they've been assigned to, and once again, Protective Services assigns the locations monthly, pre-post them. So the ones for January 2023 are already up on the website, already now on social media saying, hey, this is where they're going to be. So right now, if there's an area where they say, listen, it's either blocked or construction or whatever, that they can't safely use that area, they will easily phone us. We'll reassign them to another area. So we started doing that. We started bringing the contractor. I know there's some concerns on 50th where I believe another councillor brought up, like the vehicle is half over in one of the lanes. I spoke to the contractor. Absolutely, that can't happen. So that's been addressed. There was some other questions. Well, they're parking in a no parking zone where that. So they're exempt as part of being a vehicle for that. So they're legally allowed to park in there. But once again, what I've seen over the last year is that education piece of just people not knowing. And when I've spoke to them on the phone and said, listen, this is, you know what, they're legally allowed to park there. This is what it says. And this is what they're doing. So that's how that is addressed. We've had several, I bet you I have weekly discussions or interactions with our contractors. And if there's concerns brought up from the public, we address it right away. A lot of times, as long as that, the contractor now knows that in the event that they couldn't get to 50th Street because the snowbank's too high because it's wintertime, if they can't get available to us, they know on the list where they can go. Well, maybe they spend an hour and a half instead of 40 minutes at one site because that's how they're going to do it. So that's how we've addressed those concerns as they come up from the public. We have seen those where we've seen ones this year. Well, no, a photo was taken from a distance that almost gave you the illusion that they were parked on the sidewalk and that there was kids and a mother in a stroller that had to walk around it. But in theory, the officer took a picture of where the vehicle was parked, and they're parked between the sidewalk and the roadway. So they weren't there. But if you were looked at a distance, it looks like so the optics were a little different. So we have good conversations with our contractor. They definitely know my concerns when they come up, and we address them that way.
Perfect. Thank you. I appreciate that. And I don't think that there's been a lot of complaints as to where they're parked recently. So it obviously you have addressed that, and that's carried through. So I appreciate that. And once again, thank you for the thorough report. I think the education piece is really important, and it just even important for myself as a counselor. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McCook. Councillor Monkoff Swain.
Yeah, thanks. I'm going to try not to get philosophical here around this topic unless I get goaded into it later by some councillors. So I'll ask two specific questions. The bigger concern that I always hear about this is the stop red light where they just kind of stop, but it's like they roll half an inch and then kind of carry on, and then some poor old lady or man gets a $400 ticket. Have we thought about a way to be more lenient around that, or is there an opportunity to think about that?
Through the chair to Councillor Muckhoff-Swain, I have fielded those calls that, listen, I was crawling through a stop sign, and when you actually go look at the pictures, like, nah, no, you weren't, right? And it's a perception of, oh yeah, I was doing this. I think right now that the contractor has been given some leniency through advice from the RCMP when it comes to, it's the same thing as speed levels, right? You know, the $51 or sorry, 51 kilometers in a 50 zone. There's some leniency piece there. So the contractor does have some leniency through the in theory, the stop sign type of violations. But once again, those areas have been deemed either high risk areas where we've had a previous collision or a serious accident, and those areas are in there. Now, if there's a concern that, well, we should increase it to you know what, a rolling, like, at what point do you go, okay, now it's too much, okay? You know, going through there and not slowing down, now you can go through there 10 kilometers. And so right now we think that we have a safe enough variance in that all the ones that people have disputed with me, that I've gone back to look at the video, and pure violation for sure. Like, there's not even attempt for brake lights. It's that type of stop. So I understand your concern, the concern from the public, not saying that those are not out there, but I believe that the current variance that we do have within that red light or stop sign piece is adequate enough through the advice from our traffic safety professionals.
Okay, thank you for that. The next question I had is just around the contract itself. So 2025, it's up, but you talked about an opportunity to renew. What is council's role in that? In that, and obviously it's an operational decision in terms of your contract, but I'll just share. Previously, you know, a new contract was signed and went through this process, including that 3-year piece that the previous council wasn't aware about. So I'm just wondering if there's a way to, prior to 2025, because that really prohibited any potential changes. I for one didn't want to make any changes, but at the time, there are some councillors who did, and then this contract was signed, and there was a 3-year clause in there, and that prohibited anyone from making it because financially it was too. I can't even think it's late, but the penalty was too great, or whatever correct language is right for that. So, is there a way for to bring this, depending on where we go tonight, but to bring prior to any contract extension, et cetera, to bring that back in front of council? Is that too operational?
Yes. Through the chair to Councillor Muckhoff-Swain. Over the years, I've done many contracts of this point when it comes to cancellation clause or early out clauses or things like that. And you know what, we're looking at it from the city's perspective, but I also understand that a business owner or somebody providing a level of service needs some assurances that they're not going to invest a whole bunch of money and then you know what, lose out on a bad contract or because of clauses. Now, stating that in future contracts, would we do a 3 years? Would we do that? Would be all part of that negotiation at our RFP process in discussion with our obviously experienced team here within the city. If there's something, obviously, if we received a whole bunch of concerns that this is creating a problem, obviously we would adjust that for either midterm or the ability on a new contract to say, hey, you know what, we need this or we need that. One of the big things when it comes to the contract is like, okay, let's say we got 70 sites. Well, we only want you to do 25, right? But our contract now says we've done, you said for us to provide 70, now you want us to change it to 25. There comes a point within any contract that the contractor is going to look at it and go, well, there's no value in this, that I can't do it. And what you're changing is now has a legal implication. So we could face some type of liability if we did that somewhere mid contract. Obviously, adding on to existing fees is as difficult as taking off, because you either need to scale down resources that you've already committed to, or you now to increase your resources that you haven't predicted as of yet. So puts the contractor in a bit of a bind. So from a contracting piece, I would defer to our folks within administration to see what we've been doing elsewhere, what works. 3 years does not seem to be overly. And
I can help you. I don't have a concern with the 3 years. Like if I was a contractor, I wouldn't sign it, and it's part of the negotiation, right? I think the challenge was the contract was signed with that 3 years prior to council having a discussion on whether we wanted to move forward with it. So therefore, the 3 years was in, and like, not my job to go and negotiate the contract. I get that. But to even have that discussion beforehand to say, hey, look, we're looking at extending this. These are the implications. Because then when that came back, as I mentioned, now that contract was negotiated, that 3-year clause was in there. And so this council was hamstrung from making a decision. So I don't want to get involved in the contract. I just want some way for anything that's gonna require us to have a financial impact on the city. So does that make sense?
Yes, and through the chair to Councilor McGoffin, my apologies. Obviously,
You weren't here.
I read your messaging wrong, but knowing that I wasn't here, part of the deliberations, there's a piece there between 2019 and 2020. I'm not sure what discussions were had from previous leadership when it came to this, or it was automatic, or the city knew what was going on, that we're changing contractors. Moving forward is all I can comment on. Is that I know that this is a real optics piece for the city that provides I think an enhanced level of service, but also comes with an increased risk. Knowing that the program itself, I would ensure that there would be some discussion on, is this, we still want to provide, once again, this, we're not talking about operation, we're talking about a level of service. You still want to provide this level of service. The risk is here. We either do it, contractor does it, or nobody does it. So how do you want to do that? So that's how I would do it moving forward. But if there's members on council that can remember if a discussion was had, unfortunately, I haven't found.
I don't need to look back because I know the answer. I was there. I'm not looking for you to do that. I'm looking forward, and great. I take your word for it here. But in 3 years, how do we know that? So don't need to answer it now, but if you could just think about some consideration on how we could talk about that contract piece prior to coming up. So, and I can follow up with you offline on it. It was a trigger, I'll say, for a lot of people here. So I'll leave it there, but great presentation, and really appreciate the overview.
And just one comment about the contract itself. If the city doesn't extend it, then in 2025, it ends, right? So you either extend it, or it ends and you go back out to that RFP process, or you completely get out of the program, right? That are your options. So, okay.
Thank you, Councilor McCusker. Mayor Danler.
Thank you, Madam Chair. A quick comment, then a quick question, if you don't mind. Again, great presentation, good information, as Kat mentioned a moment ago. One thing I will mention, in my previous term and now this term on council, I spoke to a number of people who were very much opposed to photo radar. And when I tell them the funds are being used for reserve to enhance safety and for our residents, especially crosswalks, they think, well, that's a good idea. None of them knew we were doing that. So they thought it was in the city coffers being wasted away in their minds, but it's not. It's being dedicated for safety purposes. Most people didn't know that. They still don't like it, but they understand where the money's going to. So, if you speed, you help to enhance safety, which is not a bad idea. So my question, I'll get to my question. I'll thank you for that little bit of leniency there. My question is simply, one of your slides, you talked about $19, I think, being paid to the provider in your PowerPoint. I think it was 19 something it was.
29,
29, pardon me, I had the wrong number. But so bottom line is, in theory, if there were no tickets issued on a given day, we don't really pay anything, do we? To the
Uh,
provider.
Through the chair to Mayor Danluck, the contractor can only invoice us for violations that he's issued.
Correct. So in a way, we're being fiscally responsible by simply letting another service do it rather than paying for it ourselves. So if no tickets are issued, it costs the city nothing. No revenue comes in, but no cost goes out either, correct?
Correct, unless a violation is issued in accordance with the contract, there's no fee to the city.
Many people feel there's also fees being paid regardless of how many tickets are being issued. So there's no incentive for tickets to be radically issued for no reason. Okay, that's my question. I'll come back in round two. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, Mayor. Councillor Van Newkirk.
Yeah, down that similar path, I would challenge Mayor that there is incentive to give more tickets, because if they give more tickets, then they get more money. So philosophically speaking, if I was able to rewrite all of this, I wouldn't even use this model. I would look at a ATE provider, and I would look to put an RFP out there that says, tell me how many dollars per hour you would charge for this service. Then we know how much we are paying for it. And we would be in control of how many hours per day they work. We're already working with them on locations, right? So you would do that, and then all the money would come into the municipality. We'd give the Alberta government their piece, and we'd have ours. And I say that, and I start that way because one of the pieces of feedback that often, and you would have heard this too, is they're writing their own check, right? Every time they pull the trigger or validate a ticket or whatever else, they're paying themselves, right? So there is an actual easy way to do that, but it would upend it, and all the contracts aren't made that way, and I'm not the guy doing it, so I'll stop there. Anyhow, there's the philosophical piece for you. The second part, I'm happy to hear that we're not going to have the provider parked at 45-degree angles on snowbanks and ended up on Beaumont Talks. So thank you, Councillor, for asking that question. And then on a more serious note, on the stop sign enforcement, are there hours per day that they are operating, or are they operating in the dark under a broken street light, or what does that look like?
Through the chair to Councillor Van Newkirk. So we staggered their hours depending on what the concern is. We've received actually calls this year that we had some concerns that, could we get some more enforcement out in certain areas? We're seeing vehicles come in and speeding at 8 and 9 at night on 241 and that area. So we did increase some of our enforcement out to 10 at night with photo radar because the light was good. Obviously we don't really enforce a lot during the dark hours based on enforce. Wintertime's a little bit more challenging solely because of if you can't get a good view of the plate, if it's covered by snow, if it's really snowing out and you're trying to get a good capture. The technology is limited kind of that way. You can't see through things. So we do adjust the hours, and we have done it this year where we moved the timeline, as in we want patrols done by this timeline. We try to target when traffic is in those high risk areas, schools are getting out or schools are beginning, or at lunch hours when we know there's a lot of traffic and people trying to get around as quickly as possible because we only got 30 minutes for lunch. So we target those. We look at the sites internally within my office. We look at the sites for every month. Yeah, that's what we're going to do. We'll have a couple of backup sites in the event that they can't get there, and they go. So that answers your first question. If I can just comment on your philosophy question per se.
Oh, yes.
At the end of the day, the contractor doesn't determine where they're going to go or how many tickets they're going to write. The RCMP, along with the city, has determined these high risk locations based on whatever it may be. So said contractor can't stay at, in theory, the hot zone because, hey, we get 100 tickets a day out of here. They're required to move every area. And there's some areas where they've gone and they've been there 3 times in a 2-week span, 0 violations. That's perfect. That's a good thing for us. From a business side of it, hey, you know what? I can understand that. But the contractor doesn't get to, in theory, hey, we're going to get this much per year, or they're going to get this much, because those zones are controlled outside of their control. We tell them where they're going to go. We tell them how long they're going to be there before they can move to the next site. They have to be there a certain amount of time period. So we control where the enforcement's going to be instead of them controlling it and in theory, writing their own paychecks every month. So that's just a quick, I guess, discussion on the philosophy piece. So
That's right. I said my piece, you had yours, we're good. So I guess the end piece, or the piece that wasn't clear to me just on the nighttime stuff for the stop sign violation, are they going through that same process that you said, where it's like, you know, if we need some more here, then it's going there? Or like, is the stop sign enforcement out at 9 and 10 at night as well?
Through the chair to Councilor Van Newkirk, I'd have to check our stats over the last, since kind of the fall season's kicked in, to see what our hours have been on our late hours, and we can get that data. Right now, once again, if they can't go to a site because it's you know what, poor lighting, or they can't get a good photo because there's a vehicle parked in front of them, or whatever it may be, then that's where those alternate sites for that month, that they have that list of how many sites, and they can move to another site, and then they need to justify why they left that site and why they didn't spend the 40 minutes or the hour that they're required to on site. That has to be, we have to get that back. And we asked them now to take a photo from your vehicle to show why you weren't there on that site. Well, because of this, or a tree fell, or whatever the scenario may be, or windrows have piled up around, or whatever that piece may be. So we do try to stagger the enforcement, but once again, enforcement is really focused on what time of day that high risk is at its peak, that we can try to curb that culture to either slow down, come to a stop, watch for kids. Let's not have anybody have a bad day.
Yeah, and the reason I'm asking that is under the current provider, I haven't received any feedback of the dusk and evening stop sign violations. But what I will share with council and the community is my contribution to the reserve, because I've made one, occurred on a Saturday night in a snowstorm at 9:30 p.m. So, you know, that was current provider, you know, or sorry, that was previous provider, not current, right? And that's why I'm kind of asking, because what I have observed in the summaries that we've had, you know, looking backwards, comparing to where we're at, is I think controls is the wrong word. There's better process in place and higher levels of communication that are being involved right now than the ATE that I was receiving feedback on in the previous term. So I'll just leave it at that for now.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Van Newkirk. I'd agree with you. I think I had a presentation on this program every term, and it has definitely improved in terms of the process that we're following. So council's job to kind of keep our eye on these. So I appreciate that. So thank you. Councillor Tessier.
Thank you, Chair, and yeah, great conversation so far on an interesting topic. I got two motions, if that's okay, to put forward. Might as well start.
You're a busy guy.
Sandy keeps me busy. So we can start with the marked cars, if that's okay, Sandy. So I'll move that by the end of February 2023, administration prepare a report on options for increasing the visibility of automated traffic enforcement. ATE vehicles example requiring 6-foot flags and marked cars. So I know the chief touched on it a little bit in regards to flags and maybe changing the contract and as to why, but if you see the actual vehicles that are marked right now, it's about a sign this big on their tailgate. So to me, that's not really sufficient. Like, what's the point of an ATE vehicle? Is for you to see it, slow down before you make the infraction. If you go past it and make the infraction, is that safer? That doesn't make anything safer. So by marking it, like the province has tried to, but I think have not done a good job, you're just going to hopefully stop the infractions before happening. That's the intent of ATE.
Okay, you had two motions. So
Yeah, we can start with this one. Yep.
They're different. Okay. Yes, there are. Councillor Monkoff-Swain.
Yeah, I personally couldn't disagree more. I think the point of AT is to folks to know that there is ATE in the community and that makes you slow down. If you're waiting for a big marked car, then folks who are going to speed even where they don't see a marked car. So that just philosophically, you got me. There you go. Where I have trouble with this motion is you're asking for information, and Councillor two to my right will bring up my voting record, and almost every time I've always voted yes for more information, even though I think this is not the right way to go. But I would rather it come from administration to provide that background on the options. Now, I'll go back to Chief again, just around a similar question I asked earlier. There's a difference between preparing a report on options and preparing a report and recommendations from administration. So if we were to pass this, and I know we're only passing it to council, but if we were to pass this, then you and your department would bring your professional opinion on the thoughts around getting into this work. Is that a fair ask? Is that something that you would do as part of that motion?
Through the chair to Councillor McCoff-Swain. Obviously, if the intent of the motion is to provide council with information on how or if we can increase visibility, if we're permitted to, if there's any cost to do that from a contractor or from a city's perspective, on what would that look like? And three, if that would be approved by the province, that's how I would see to give council the educated information to make that educated decision. That's how I would perceive it.
Okay.
That's how I would read it. But if it needs to be more detailed, but just reading it now, that's
okay.
through the lens I'm looking through. That's what I would provide back.
Yeah. So if my my colleague is willing to add that little friendly amendment there to say and considerations in there, that helps me very reluctantly support this motion.
I appreciate that, because I do, like, obviously it has to understand what that looks like in the contract. Is it possible, right? So I think the province had good intent, but if you look at other municipalities like Stony Plain and Spruce Grove, they have huge signs on their trucks. It's gonna force you to slow down. It cannot be used for a revenue generator. I'm all for making it safer, and if I can see it, if you're speeding, which you shouldn't be, but if you see it, you will slow down. I sold you. I know I did.
No, he didn't. Not at all.
Philosophically speaking.
He lost philosophically, but he won the vote.
So, Mayor, you'd like to speak? Oh, you've pulled it off. No? Okay. Okay. So I don't see any others, the councilors with any questions or comments. We'd like to take a vote then on this motion. And it's to recommend it to council. Okay. All right. Voting. Gotta remember how to do all of this. We haven't voted in a couple of minutes here. A couple of hours more likely. Please vote. And that passes unanimously. Thank you very much. Okay, you have a
Thank you.
second.
On to the next one, Chair, if that's okay.
Yes, please. Have to keep my eye on both sides of the room here.
I'll move that by the end of February 2023, administration prepare a report on options for reducing the scope of the current program. Example, removing red light and stop sign automated enforcement, and that the report include information on the financial, legal, safety, or other considerations related to this option. Now, the reason I'm just going after red light and stop signs, I think there's still a place for photo radar in school zones and other places that we don't have enough officers to enforce, but I've got the ticket. My wife's got a couple of them at $380, and sometimes, like, the one video is no one's around, like it's not really enhancing the safety of that intersection at that moment. I think I'd be a lot more open to it if it wasn't $380 every single time. So again, I think it's an unrealistic ask. It's like a huge complaint that we get all the time for something that just came. When did it start, Chief? 4 years ago? Was it added to the last contract here?
Through the chair to Councillor Tessier, I didn't look back in that information when they added that piece in. I do know that it's broken down, but I'd have to go back and look at the previous sites to see when that technology was there that they added in. So it might have been part of the previous global contract, which ended in 2019, I would assume. But unfortunately, I don't have that data in front of me.
Thanks, Chief.
So there's a question. Councillor Monkhoff-Swain.
Yeah, first, I can't believe you threw Kim under the bus, calling out her tickets. For me, and again, I'll speak just so that I don't get taken down by Steve here. I've seen this report before many times, so I personally will be voting against this. I just think you've got way more important things to be doing than looking at this. Again, it just goes back to me. If you don't want to take it, don't roll through a stop sign or a red light. It's pretty straightforward. Again, for me, it's about it's a prevention thing as well. I know driving around Beaumont that I stop at every stop sign and red light because I know it's here. I don't look for the car. I don't look for the or the truck or whatever to figure out whether I'm going to stop or not. If that goes, then I just think we're going to see people rolling through stop signs more, and that isn't safe for Beaumont. So, yeah, like to Councillor or Chair Barnhart's point earlier, she's seen it 3 times. I've seen it once. We had a good discussion on it. My philosophy is not going to change whether depending on what the information comes back. So I don't support it. I think Chief has got a whole bunch more stuff to worry about than this. So I will be voting against this and encourage my councillors to do so. I do have a question for administration, just to put a bit of pressure on Tessier here. Could you just please speak to what would happen if it went to if it was 3-3 this vote procedurally?
Mayor, through you to Councillor Monkhoff-Swain. So a tied vote is a lost vote, and that's set out in our meeting procedures.
Thank you.
Thank you for that clarification. Councillor McCook.
Thank you. I have to agree with Councillor Monkhoff-Swain. I think some of this, it's not about enhancing safety in the moment, but encouraging people to not do it again. So if you get that ticket, hopefully the next time you're rolling through that stop sign or the next time you're going through that red light, you're thinking twice. I also, the red light ones, we just have so few that in an entire year that that's not even like close to 1 a day or it's like 1 a week, if that. So I just don't know that would have that big of an impact. And once again, to Councillor Monkhoff-Swain's point, I think we have so many things in place now that Chief Melvin explained that we're really working towards ensuring that it isn't a cash cow and ensuring that we are putting it in places that there have been issues in the past and stuff like that. And I think the reason the tickets are so high is to really encourage people to let's not do this. Let's make sure that we're driving safely. So I don't know that I could support this at this moment. Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Daniluk.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I also have difficulty with this in the sense that when I first thought of the idea being suggested, I thought it has some merit to it possibly. But then I saw the statistics again from the report. I'm quite frankly, I wouldn't say appalled is too strong a word, but considering over 1,000 stop sign red light violations were issued versus 1,500 speeding things, there's apparently an issue. People think stop signs are perhaps optional. That's a pretty big number. And based on that, I have difficulty supporting this because in principle, the idea is safety. And I don't think stop signs, red lights are optional. But that statistic seems to say that some people think it is optional. I know 4 or 5 people who've got multiple red light stop sign fines, and they're not happy about it. But I thought, well, that's a lot. If you get 3 or 4 in a year, that's an issue. So I do think the number of violations that have been issued this year so far is more than I thought it would be. And I'm not comfortable supporting the motion as presented. Thank you.
Thank you. And I won't be supporting it either. And I don't think I need to repeat the reasons why. I think I've heard them from councillors that have spoken already. So if there are no further requests to ask questions or speak, I'll call.
I'll close my motion off. That's okay, Chair.
You want to take it off?
No. I just want
You
to
would
talk
like
to it.
Speak to it?
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry,
Yeah.
I didn't see your
No.
name there, so I didn't go back to you.
Yeah, no, I appreciate all the conversation. Just, we know that when the infraction occurs, you don't get the ticket for like 2 months later, right? The safety factor doesn't clue in until you get the ticket. So, obviously an officer being there is going to be more effective, but you're going to make the infraction whether you think you're not going to or not. It's already happened. You're just getting a $380 ticket. That's all. Thanks.
Okay, you closed it off, so I'll let it stay there. Okay. Thank you. And I'll call the vote then. And it fails 4-2, 2 in favor and 4 against. So that motion failed. Thank you. I don't know why it's not showing there, but it's showing on my screen as 4-2. Oh, it is. Okay. It did say 4-2. Just the green and the red is hard to read. When you look up, you think that the red is against, but it's actually who's present and who's not. But the vote was 4 against and 2 in favor. Okay. I got rid of it on my screen, but I believe it's Councillor Tessier and Councillor Van den Kirk. Yeah, who voted against and the rest are in favor. Sorry. And against, the other way around. Yes, thank you. Got a lot of help here. It's real good. Okay. All right. So is there anything else we needed to do? We need to move any more motions or this for information?
Through
Madam
the chair,
Clerk?
hopefully there's no more motions, but if there's any other questions, and like I said, just a reminder, the traffic safety bylaw will be coming back in January for first reading. We'll make those recommendations and changes and some of that quick feedback if required. If there is any questions between now and then, feel free to fire them through our chain and we'll try to get those answers back out for you. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm just checking, Madam Clerk, are there any other motions needed or is that enough to follow up? We have. Yeah.
Councillor Tessier has reached his limit for the evening. There are no more motions.
Okay.
But we do have a couple of quick items left on the
Yes,
agenda.
I know we're not finished with the agenda. Thanks, Chief. So we're ending the year at the bang here. So that's great. So councillor inquiries, I'm afraid to ask, but are there any councillor inquiries? Yes, Councillor Monk-Swain.
I do have one.
Okay.
Pretty straightforward. Please provide information about the city's ability to obtain 5G cellular network coverage throughout Beaumont.
Okay, so that's an inquiry that'll come back to us at a later date. Thank you very much, Councillor Monk-Swain. There are no other councillor inquiries. Then we're, I think, finished as far as I can see on my agenda. We are then going to call for an adjournment. Oh, we do. Right, and that's not in closed.